Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 9-Inch Charge. Well, Tom and I have played quite a few games of Warhammer The Old World. Now we've got another gaming weekend lined up. We've been playing on UB, and it is fair to say that we have really enjoyed every single game that we have played. And this might well be our favourite edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, or The Old World, whatever you want to call it. For a number of reasons. Of course, it does have its problems. We've spoken a bit about Dragon Hammer and stuff like that. But I actually think that if you treat the game, with a bit of respect and you bring sort of fun lists to engage with your opponent, it's so good and it's so fun. So we wanted to bring to you today our top 5 or maybe 6, maybe 7. We'll see how far we go, but we'll definitely bring you the top 5 reasons that we absolutely love the Old World. And I want to kick off with just something simple before we get into the real meat of it. We're going to start with the potatoes, maybe, before we get into the meat of the meat and potatoes.
A good potato makes a meal, Daniel. So let's not undersell the potato. If someone comes at you with some bad chips,
base sizes. I want to talk about base sizes because as a long-standing Wood Elf player, I can tell you this much. Glade Guard were purposefully designed not to rank up. I can tell you that. And Dryads, even on their bigger bases with branches and limbs and things all over the place, they were a nightmare. And I know I'm not alone. I know it's not only Wood Elf players. I know there are a lot of people who used to turn their models upside down and label them. This guy is in rank 1. He is in position 2 of rank 1. And then you could finally get all your models together. And I understand that rebasing your army is an upheaval, but there are spacer trays and, base adapters and things like that to help you. But once you put the models down as a unit, they're just so much more cohesive. They go together. There's no fuss. There's no faff. It's just, and they look really cool as well. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it disrupts the flow of the game. I know we talk because people aren't bringing horde units so much. There's more of a focus on smaller units, I think, now, and I think it's just a really good change.
I think it opens up an incredible opportunity to bring in those AOS models as well. They're fantastic. I've seen so many armies online that are AOS models on square bases, on the appropriate size square base, and they just look incredible. Those Lumineth Realm Lords as high ups, it's I want that. I want that.
Yeah, and Chaos players, Undead players, Lizardman players, you can benefit from the glow up that those have had. Orcs as well. I've had some cool models released in Age of Sigmar, Goblins in particular, I would say. And yeah, those models are much more dynamic because they're made for skirmishing, but they do rank up really well. I think there is something of a look of a ranked up army, and models that are designed for that versus models that are designed for skirmish. But I have to say, the ones that I've seen ranked up, they do look great, don't they?
Yeah, the ultimate contradiction. My Wood Elves aren't made to be ranked up, but they look great when they're ranked up.
Guard are meant to be ranked up, and they actually would.
They look great. They look fantastic. The Eternal Guard.
But yeah, I mean, I am leaning into, this is another discussion really, but I am leaning into Skirmish Hammer. You're right. I don't particularly like to rank things up. I like to have 360 line of sight, 360 charge arcs, 360 shooting.
We're talking about things that make the Old World great, not
that annoy
Skirmish
you.
Hammer. Yeah, not that annoy me to no
end. So that's my first one. It's not my number one. It's my first one. All right. Next up, Tom, let's talk about initiative.
Ooh. Big one for the old Bretonnian player in the room.
Yeah.
I am so glad that this is now a thing because my Bretonnian knights can go gallivanting off the other side of the board and not feel like they're charging in with noodles. They get to go in. Usually they're going to strike first and they're going to do a bit of damage. And I love it.
Yeah, so what I like about that is the way initiative works now, where you get bonuses if you charge, you get bonuses for the weapon type that you use. Not only does it feel right that if you're receiving a charge with a spear, you should have a little bit of an initiative boost, for example. I think it's just hit a really sweet spot in the game, because when I first played Warhammer, it was, in 5th, 6th, it was if you charged, you went first automatically. And then we moved away from that and we moved to striking in initiative order. Whereas now, we're at the sweet spot where you get a bonus. And I think what's cool about that is that it creates some cool interactions as well. So, like, as an elf player, I've got a higher natural initiative than someone who's going to charge me. So then if I can find a way to debuff them or increase mine, you can get to a point where you strike at the same time and things like that. And you can do really cool things with it. And I like all that interaction. And I like that it's not just automatic. And it just makes the weapons feel right. If you're charging in lances down and you've charged, I know it's only 3 inches that you've got to be, but if you charge across the table with your lances down, you better believe you're going to go in and, create some skeleton kebabs or something on the end of your lance.
Yes, yeah. There's also really good things you could do to disrupt the charges as well. So when you make a disrupted charge, you don't get your initiative bonus. So, like, it's one little thing, but it just branches out to so many aspects of the game that makes it so cool. And it just makes great weapons so incredible. Like a small little unit running around with great weapons, suddenly, if they charge over 3 inches, they're striking at initiative 4. Get out. Get out of here with that nonsense, but I love it.
Yeah, no, I like that there are things that strike at initiative 1. I think that is a really cool change. Because as we said, if you charge, it adds that interaction and it makes getting those charges more important, and it just adds a lot of cool stuff. And like I said, I really think they've hit the sweet spot of you always go for your initiative or you always get to strike first if you charge. I just think it feels really good. And it's funny because we were talking about is this going to be a dumbed down edition? So it adds more complexity to the game for sure, but it adds it in a way that I think feels really thematic. And that's another thing for me that's really important when I play, is that when you're moving your models around on the tabletop and something cool happens, we're waiting for that dice roll, or we're cheering, or we're shouting "wag" or whatever, we're getting carried away. But it adds to those moments, and it creates tension, and I like it for that.
I think the way it worked before was a bit of a detractor, wasn't it? Because you would make the epic charge, and if you were playing against your janky wood elves, they'd just strike you first and kill you, and you just go, well, what was the point in that?
Yeah, you got +1 to your combat resolution, even though you're all dead. You got that +1.
I'll take the +1, thank you.
The other one, the next reason I wanted to talk about was about combat. And I think this might be a little bit divisive. But personally, I really like that at the end of combat, you give ground or fall back in good order or flee. I like that the combat gets broken because I can remember a time, particularly in 8th edition, where you had Horde units or you had Death Star units. And I used to play quite a lot of games and see quite a lot of games where what would happen is you would end up with a big mash in the middle. And then that would take all game to sort out. It would be a big multi-combat and everything would be steadfast, and you'd never have a break from that. And that could happen quite a bit. Whereas now you have the option if you want to follow up or not, and you don't have to get drawn into massive long combats that last all game. And you get a reform as well, which means you can kind of go off and do other things. Now, I know that this can be exploited. Dr. Luke Blackshill, definitely check out his channel if you haven't already. He left a comment in one of our videos talking about spin and win, or it might have been one of his.
It's one of his videos.
Yeah, he talked about spin and win. So, you charge in, you do your damage, they fall back, and then you spin around and you can charge into something else. Now, I get that that can happen, but I would much rather that happen than you just get stuck forever.
Yeah. So going back to that, when I first started, I found that was the biggest problem in 8th edition. We just like smashed the models in the middle of the table, and then you forgot about the shooting phase, the movement phase. You may have done a bit of magic if your wizard was still alive, but you just go, let's go straight to the combat phase. But now there's always, especially if you're a new player, you're engaged through every turn because your combats are breaking up. You've got an opportunity to move that, or you have to redeclare your charge. So I think it's really engaging now.
Yeah, I think it's just slick and it gives you options and it makes the game more dynamic. Now, obviously, this isn't a skirmish game, it's a rank and file game, so it's never going to be the most dynamic game because you can't just go off charge in any direction you want. You have to turn and all these kinds of things. But I am pleased that you can do more than just one thing with your unit. If you want to break it out from combat, then you can, and there might be reasons for that. If your wizard is engaged in combat, you might want to be able to dispel or cast different kinds of spells. And there's lots of cool reasons, and I'm just pleased that the game gives you that opportunity.
Number 4.
So next, I would like to just highlight magic being in every phase. I think is really cool. And this comes from someone who really liked the magic phase in 8th edition in particular. I think I really enjoyed it. I liked having the pool of dice and then trying to tease out your opponent's dispel dice to get that spell you really wanted. And although that is gone now, and the resource management part of it I thought was really fun and you could be a bit sneaky and stuff, I really like that magic is in every phase.
I'm just putting my hand up on this. I'm calling this out, Dan. Your go-to strategy for the magic phase was Throne of Vines and then ignore miscast and 6 dice big spell.
Well, yeah. However, now that's gone. And I really like the interactions between the spells through the phases. And in some of the games that we have played, there have been those interactions. And I like how that magic, it doesn't take all the toys off, but it can be very disruptive. You can block line of sight for that against that big dragon or against that unit that wants to charge, and then suddenly they can't. There are good damage dealers. We talk a lot about Ruby Ring of Ruin in our own chat. For clear
Fireball is fire in this game. I love that spell.
It's a great chaff clearer.
Class.
So there are useful pivotal spells, but I really like that you can cast your conveyance, get that extra move, get yourself further up in range to cast that fireball, and all those kinds of things. I think are really cool. I like that I like that they're categorized as the thing that they are. So fireball is a magic missile, so it's shot in the shooting phase, and then assailment spells are combat. So you can cast an assailment spell in your opponent's turn because you are still fighting them, and you can fight them with your assailment spell. I think that is really cool. Although I do miss the resource management kind of part of it. The world feels more magical, and I think it's cool that they interact in the turn that they interact with. I just really like that part of it. Magic doesn't feel confined to just one bit. And of course, you're going to cast your combat spells in combat. Of course, you're going to cast your missile spells when you're doing your missile stuff. It's more intuitive. I do think that yes, there is a part of it now that it's your dice roll versus my dice roll. However, a lot of Warhammer's like that. Might of Wound roll versus your save roll. That is what Warhammer is like. It is a game of dice and stuff. So, I get that it's different, and it can just come down to what the dice are rather than having to manage a bit better and maneuver your spell casting and stuff a bit more. But I really like it.
Yeah, I think Magic's going to have a lot of depth. The better you are with your movement and positioning, the better you're going to, the more you're going to get out of Magic. So in like our first couple games, I was looking at this game and I was just like, why have I even spent money on this wizard? It's not done anything. It's just stood in combat with you. It completely out of place with no spells that would help it. And then I got better, and I got more out of my mage, and I've just started to love it a little bit more. And now every list, I'm like, oh, how do I make my mage a little bit better? How do I get more from this? What are they going to be doing in this battle?
Yeah, because they're completely right. I mean, the positioning of mages is really important now as well, isn't it? Where you don't necessarily want them in your big Death Star unit because it protects them, because you're going to get drawn into combat and you won't be able to do a lot with them. You want them kind of on the sidelines, and then also there's also the range for dispelling is different on your wizard level. So you don't want to be out of dispel range and stuff like that. I mean, at the moment, I tend to play that my wizard is next to a unit, so they're protected by, can't be targeted. Mm-hmm. And then they push up the middle of the table.
Yeah. Right, on to the next one.
Oh, yeah. I like that strength is not paired to armor piercing. Because it was just lazy in a way before. If you had high strength, you had high AP, and it just goes without saying. And you could get ridiculous AP because you begin to chip away at armor at strength 4, but like a cannon would be strength 10 all the way up. And things like Potion of Strength, for example, where you could just get like +3 to your strength, it just meant you got +3 AP. And I think it's much better now that you can have the strength and not have the AP, and you need to kind of
you have to really tool your character. So before it was one solution, increase strength, and it did it for you. But now you have to think, well, I may be able to wound a knight really easily, but it's probably going to save it. So what's the point in wounding it? So you want to find that balance of trying to introduce armor penetration into your characters or your units.
Yeah. And I think it was all too easy to get that strength bonus that then automatically gave you that AP. So like you said, talking about knights, well, it's like, it's fine. I'll just take something that's strength 5 or strength 6. Whereas now you need to think about your matchups a bit more, and it adds that bit more of depth and a bit more of interaction. Like I said, with initiative, I think that's another one of the big changes that I really enjoy. And sometimes it can be frustrating. Because you think, oh, that's not quite the right matchup, but that's where that's where the nuance goes and the list building goes and all that kind of stuff, and it just makes me happy and excited to play Warhammer. Happy. Yeah, I like those matchups. I like a bit more of the rock paper scissors going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we do one more? We could do one more.
We could do a few more. I'm sure there's some cool stuff we can talk about.
All right. Another one that I like: monsters now pay for their movement, including their wheels. So if they don't march, they can turn. But if they march, like, they have to pay for that movement and that wheeling, and that's a really big thing, I think. It's just an improvement, because dragons should feel lumbering and big. And they shouldn't just feel like they can just turn on a sixpence somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it was way too powerful in 8th that, like, wherever I put, like, if I flew a dragon or a phoenix or whatever flying monster I had, that when I put it down, I could just be like, yep. And now I'm facing the back of your unit. Now if you pay for that to fly over the back of someone with your march, you then have to pay to turn back round again. And it just I know that, well, I don't want to say it just helps balance them because they're not balanced, but in an ideal world, I think that is an improvement in the game.
Yeah, well, it's about creating a train of thought, isn't it? You have to plan. You have to plan a turn ahead to get your dragon in the right place to do the thing it needs to do, instead of just and it turned around and now you're dead. Because if it could do that in this edition, it'd be way too broken, and as if it's not broken enough.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think.
I was just going to talk anecdotally about our game we played when I took a dragon. Like for 2 turns, it couldn't do anything because it got out of position because I charged the wrong unit, and it cost me the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you charge the right unit? Because it won me the game.
You topsy-turvied that.
So yeah, but I think there's plenty to talk about. Plenty of reasons why this is a really great edition and a really fun edition, and why we've been really enjoying our games. Um, you know, I think it's one of those. It's one of those things where the more we've played it, the more depth we've found to it, and I think we're really kind of excited going on that journey of discovering how the interactions work with the units in the new rules system. So yeah, please let us know what you have found most enjoyable about playing Warhammer The Old World in your games. Especially, I'd like to know your most heroic moments, because we've had some cool heroic moments as well. I'm looking forward to some more. So we've been designing some lists with some cool heroes and stuff like that. So let us know those moments as well. And if you'd like to see more content like this from us and some more chat about Warhammer The Old World, please make sure you're subscribed. And we'll catch you next time.